Hey, this is Waylon from Swiftwood Bows, and in this video I'm going to show you how to add self-nocks to the bow. So, if you remember back when we laid this bow out, we made the top limb a little bit longer than the bottom limb, and so if you chose to make your limbs even, this is the time to decide which limb you want to be your top limb. But for my bow, it's already decided because this limb is an inch longer. So this is the top limb. I marked it up here. So before I show you how to carve in the self-nocks, I just want to explain a little bit about what self-nocks are and what some of the other options could be later down the road if you want to learn some different knock styles. So self-nocks are just string grooves that are carved directly into the bow wood. As opposed to having some sort of overlay glued onto the tip. I like to use horn for my overlays. A lot of people use different kinds of hardwoods, exotic hardwoods that kind of have a contrasting color to them and a nice green. I'm not going to get into that on this video. They're not necessary for this bow, but just know that that's an option, and you can look for future videos on how I do my tip overlays. I've done them as part of some of my other bow builds before, if you're curious. And just for the sake of knowing, there's a few other kinds of knocks that get used. Typically there's something called a pin knock, which just leaves a little bit of wood sticking up off the top of the tip for the string to wrap around. There's side knocks, where there's just one groove carved into the side. There's like the English horn knocks, which are like a horn cap that goes over the tip, and the groove is carved into the horn. So there's various ways to make knocks for a bow, and I'm just going to show you one that is pretty simple and straightforward, and I think can look really nice if you do it right. One quick comment about self-nocks and string material. For a long time now, probably ever since fast flight string material was developed, which is a low stretch modern string material made from Dyneema, and there's been a myth going around that fast flight is dangerous for self bows with self-nocks, that it can cause the wood to splinter and tear out, damaging the bow. And I guess that's theoretically possible if you do a really bad job carving your string grooves. You might do something that could invite the string material to tear out. But there are a lot of bowyers who have been making self bows with fast flight string for many years, and I've never had problems with it. I've never heard anyone that's got a credible account of a bow failing because of fast flight string, but it's something that you'll probably hear if you're out there on the internet talking to people about string material and bows. And I've been making bows for 10 years. I lost count of how many bows I've made. Every single one of them has used fast flight. I've done a lot of self-nocks. I've never had a single problem with it. So, yeah, there's that. That's my opinion on it. So anyway, let's get down to the details of how we're going to do this. Okay, so this is going to be my top tip, and mainly for aesthetic purposes, I like to have my top tip be longer than my bottom tip. It doesn't really have any practical function. I like to keep my bottom tip kind of short and stubby and round, because that's the tip that's going to be coming into contact with the ground more often, and I like to just make it more durable. The top tip I like to make a little longer just because it looks cool. So it's really up to you how long you want to make your tip. I mean, you could put your string grooves in right here near the top if you wanted, and leave nothing above it. Everything that's above the string grooves is purely for show. But I like to leave about 1 inch. So I'm going to measure down about 1 inch and just make a little mark. I'm going to draw a line straight across the back of the bow, right there. And then I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to eyeball a 45-degree angle. So that would be 90. That would be nothing. So kind of splitting the difference, make it at 45 degrees. And I'll just draw a line here. Now, I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do my best to match it to what I did on the other side. If you want, you can just prove your angles by connecting the line here across the belly. They should be coming out on the belly side at the same spot. These are just guidelines. Honestly, when I do this on my own, I've stopped drawing lines. But when you're first getting started doing self-nocks, it's a good idea. You want to make sure that these lines on the side are angling towards the handle. That might seem obvious, but I've seen guys who are making their first bow get a little overeager and accidentally carve the knock going out towards the tip, and that doesn't work. So once I've got that line, those guidelines drawn on there, I'm going to take a round file. This is like a chainsaw file. There's lots of different needle files and rat tail files, and there can be a variety of how wide the file is. I wouldn't go any wider than this kind of chainsaw file. You can definitely go smaller. So I'm going to put the file right here at this corner, the top corner on the back, where the two lines meet, and I'm just going to start a little groove there. Now before I get it deep, I'm going to go over to the other side, and I'm going to get a groove going over there too. So my goal is to make these symmetrical and identical. And if you do one side completely and then try to match the other side to it, you're not going to have a lot of wiggle room, and it's quite possible that they won't match. So I like to do a little bit on one side and then do a little bit on the other side, and then just keep eyeballing it as I go and making sure that they're the same. So you're going to follow that guideline down the side of the bow to establish that 45-degree angle. And you're going to do it on the other side. And like I said, you're not making it deep yet, you're just getting it established so that you can check and make sure that they're matching up, that they're coming out in relatively the same place on the belly, or that they're starting in the same place on the back. Before it gets very deep, you've got some wiggle room to adjust it if it's not perfect. And you can kind of adjust it as you go along the whole time, as long as you're paying attention. So, let's see. These are looking pretty good so far. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. So you can see better what I'm doing. Just following those 45-degree lines, cutting in my grooves so that they match at the top and they match at the belly. So these are looking pretty good. This one's coming out a little bit further down the belly than this one, so I can adjust just by pushing the file up against this side of the groove to move the groove downward a little bit. Change that angle while it's still really shallow. That looks better. So it's getting a little bit off here. Instead of being like that, it's a bit like that. So now I'm going to start to adjust the angle here by working on one edge of it to get them to look closer. Now, I should have probably mentioned this earlier. This is a really important point. When you're doing self knocks, this strip here of the back of the bow that goes between the two grooves, it has to remain undamaged. You do not want to file across the back of the bow to connect the two grooves. This strip is what's giving you the integrity that you need. The string, all the pressure of the string is going to be pushing down right across that bridge there. And if you violated the grain, you're asking for that string to catch the grain and split out part of your bow. And so whatever you do, leave that integrity of the wood on the back. It doesn't have to be really wide. There can be a fairly narrow strip there, but it has to be unviolated. So at this stage, we don't have to make a perfect tip. We just need to make it functional so that we can carry on with our tillering. Often I will just put the grooves in so that they're functional and leave the tip kind of unrefined like this until I'm a lot closer to finishing the bow. So the important thing about making these self-nocks safe and functional is this top corner here of the groove. So if you think about how the string is laying in there, it's pulling across this bridge, but also putting a lot of pressure on this top corner here. So if we leave it a sharp edge, it's inviting the string to splinter the wood there. So what we need to do to make this a good, solid, dependable self-knock is to square off this leading edge a little bit. So I'm going to angle the file so that it's kind of going perpendicular to that sharp edge, and I'm just rounding it off and making it a solid platform for the string to sit on. I can kind of clean up the other edges around here too while I'm at it. But just think about creating a solid shelf there. It doesn't have to be big. Just get rid of that sharp edge of the wood. Alright, so I'm working this leading edge down to a nice flat shelf so that the string has something substantial to rest on and it won't be tempted to cut down into the grain. It's subtle. You don't have to really wear this edge down a whole lot. Just take that edge off, square it off a little bit, and it should be fine. Now, I could refine this completely and make a nice beautiful tip right now. There wouldn't be any reason that would hurt anything. I like to just get this functional, leave it a little bit chunky so I can move on with my tillering, and then when everything's feeling good about the bow and I'm getting it to bend, then I can come back and shape this tip like I want it. But for now, this is going to serve our purposes just fine. It's deep enough to hold the string. It's safe. It's got the strip of the back here that hasn't been touched. It's got the rounded corners here on the leading edge. It's symmetrical so that when I am ready to make it look nice, the grooves will already be all nice and lined up. If it's not symmetrical, it's going to look funny no matter how sleek you make the tips. I'm not going to do the bottom tip for the camera just because it's going to be the exact same process. I'm just going to make it a little bit shorter. So instead of an inch, it's going to be more like 1/2 inch or 5/8 of an inch. I think I measured it to 5/8 here. So I'll just start cutting the grooves here, and then I'll just have a nice small rounded tip on the bottom limb. So that's how we get the self nocks carved in, getting the bow ready to bend. I'll show you later in the process how we can refine these and make them look really nice as well as being solid and functional. So I'll get that bottom tip finished up, and the next video I will show you how we can string the bow for the first time, and there's a lot that we can learn from getting the bow strung for the first time. It's going to tell us how good of a job we did with that first part of the tillery. So I'll catch up with you then. Thanks for watching, and take care.